Hey guys, it's Hunter. Welcome back to another video. So this big box just arrived with something inside that I'm super excited about. Let's go ahead, open it up. Okay, so this absolute monster is the ENGL Founders Edition Special Edition. No, Special Edition Founders Edition. ENGL's lineup and naming scheme continues to be a mystery for me, but I love their amps though. The Savage Mark II has been my go-to for a while now, and this Special Edition Founders Edition, nailed it, is their brand new flagship. Let's hear what it sounds like in a full mix, and then we'll go through a full breakdown of all the tones and features, because with 42 tone shaping knobs and switches on the front panel alone, another 9 on the back, this thing is incredibly intimidating at first glance. Don't worry, we'll run through everything, and I'll explain what's going on, because it's really not as bad as it first seems. Well, it kind of is, but also it isn't. It's a super powerful piece of kit with just a ridiculous amount of functionality and versatility, and believe it or not, ENGL's do more than just chug. Ola recently did a video on this amp. He called it ENGL's be-all, end-all amplifier. It definitely looks the part. Let's see if he's right. So smack a like on the video if you're going to enjoy it. That actually massively helps out with the cruel mistress that is the YouTube algorithm, and let's hear what this absolute beast of an amp sounds like. Okay, so this Founders Edition variant is an upgraded version of the ENGL Special Edition. Special Edition of what amp, you might ask? Special Edition of the Fireball, the Powerball, the Savage? Nope, Special Edition is its own amp line. So this Founders Edition represents the latest evolution from founder Edmund ENGL and head amp designer Horst Langer of an amp that debuted a full 20 years ago. It's also completely separate to the Ironball Special Edition, but this is getting ridiculous, so we move. And slightly annoyingly, this is one of the only amps where I'd recommend you actually read the manual to truly understand how powerful this thing is. But the manual is also written in a way to help you understand the thinking behind every feature, so you know how to approach it and get the most out of the amp. And I will note that you can get a great tone with it with everything set to noon. That's pretty much all I did for the demo track, except the gain was set on 3 and the presence was boosted slightly. That was on the lead 1 channel just to show you this amp can be plug and play. It's got that German style high gain tone I really like, super clear and precise, and on top of that you have all these additional features with infinite combinations to really tweak the sound and make it your own. So think of it like that, a super solid amp right out the gate, and then a load of cherries on top. This is the EL34 version. There's also a 6L6 variant. It's a 5-channel amp. Technically, we'll get back to that in a second. Most of my time messing around with this amp was on lead 1, that's your high gain rhythm tone. Lead 2 is a beefier high gain sound. It's good for leads or extra chonky high gain riffage. The 2 channels have shared EQ besides individual treble controls. You've got dual volumes and a shared reverb control. Generally, I'm not a massive fan of shared EQ on multi-channel amps, but ENGL have done a great job voicing the channels. Some amps are voiced in a way where shared EQ just doesn't work. You have to pick one channel to dial in at the expense of the other channels, and that's just not the case here. It's awesome. There's a contour switch, which revoices the mids, especially in the low mids. And a mid-edge switch that, again, revoices the mids, this time especially in the upper mids. So you can use them separately or together for some interesting results. And just by how this amp looks, with all the red lights and LEDs, you might expect that's all you're gonna get out of it, chug sounds. But you'd be wrong. It's also got a nice, crisp, German-style clean channel. And a very lively crunch channel. It's super funny. The Savage is the same. You don't expect it, but they put a lot of effort into the non-chug sounds. Shared-ish EQ, dual volume, and shared reverb situation is the same between these 2 channels as with the other 2. There's a gain boost switch to push both channels. Then you've got a bright switch that boosts the high end. And there's a mid-shift control that revoices the mids. And on the back, you have controls for the tube driver circuit. Now, from the name, I'd assumed that it was a built-in tube screamer style overdrive in front of the preamp. That is not what the tube driver is. It's essentially an entirely different simple preamp circuit, basically the hidden 5th channel. You can get some nice, mellow overdrive tones with a different flavor than either the clean channel with a gain boost or the dedicated crunch channel. Like I'm telling you guys, people sleep on ENGL amps because they think all they do is the high gain chug stuff. And yeah, they do that super well, in fairness. As primarily, well, almost exclusively a metal player, the lead channels are why I fell in love with ENGL amps. The high gain tones are so crunchy. It's like huge and well-defined at the same time. And with all the tone shaping options in the mids, they can really cut through in pretty much any sort of mix situation. But understand, this is a super versatile studio tool with just an absurd amount of tones. Oh, and I forgot to mention for the lead channels, there's a high gain switch, which if you disengage, essentially turns lead 1 and lead 2 into pushed crunch channels for a grand total of 3 different flavors of crunch. Also on the back panel, you can adjust the threshold of the built-in noise gate, as well as an indicator to monitor the health of the power tubes. Then we move over to the global settings, dual presence controls, dual master volumes, if you need different settings for rhythm and for lead. You can also select between 3 independent effects loops. Absurd. You can switch between the 2 parallel loops or the single serial loop. Real quick crash course on these, oversimplified, but a serial loop is where 100% of the preamp signal of the amp voice goes through the loop and then into the power amp, the amp volume. A parallel loop is where the preamp signal gets split in 2, going through both the loop and going directly into the power amp, and that lets you control the blend of wet and dry signals. Depth boost beefs up the low end in the power amp. And mega low punch adds additional low ends, mainly in the preamp section. So between the 2 of those, you can get a stupid amount of low end out of this amp. Okay, and then on top of all that, there's a modern classic switch that, in ENGL's words, changes the basic tonal character of the 4 front panel channels. Generally, I prefer the modern voice on all the channels, but again, if you didn't have enough tonal diversity, here's even more ground covered. Crazy Germans. So yeah, ENGL have packed a ridiculous amount of stuff into this amp. But once you understand what everything does, it's still a lot. However, it's manageable because everything has a purpose. And all of it, including the standby switch to mute the amp, can be controlled via MIDI. So it's a shame and kind of weird that a Flagship doesn't come with any sort of foot switch. I've noticed this is pretty common amongst German amp brands for some reason, but especially in an amp that has this much going on. I mean, it's got 5 channels. At least a simple foot switch would have been a nice welcome addition. It is a slight annoyance that without a MIDI controller, you can't save your preferred settings for each individual channel and then have them automatically recalled when you switch to that channel. Like maybe I want the depth boost on for lead 1, and then for lead 2 I don't, but I want the reverb engaged. You can't save those settings to each channel, or if you can, I haven't figured it out yet. You can save one preset to load up when you first turn the amp on. Right now that's my preferred rhythm chug sound, so that's cool. But the point I'm making is it seems like if you have a MIDI controller, you're gonna get a lot more out of the overkill of functionality that this amp has to offer. Now, I'm not trying to be overly critical of ENGL, because once you finally understand this amp, you realize they've created a masterpiece of a studio tool that covers so much tonal ground. But I do think it's a shame that while this amp is so good for so many things, just because of how it looks, you'd have to imagine that a lot of people outside the pure metal crowd just aren't going to consider this. And even then, you're gonna have a lot of players within that pure metal circle who will look at the front panel and just go, nope, too complicated, I'm going with a 5150. And fair enough, this is a celebration in overkill, right? Like, it's how good can we make this amp sound and how bonkers can we make the feature set. It's kind of why I love it though. It's satisfying. It's a beast I've managed to tame. It is a lot though, and if it's still overwhelming, that's why I plan on taking a look at the Fireball too. Somehow I've never managed to try one. Make sure you're not one of the 293,485% of viewers who aren't subscribed, and hit the bell for notifications, that way you don't miss that video. Yeah, I've kind of been repeating myself a lot during this video because in terms of features and in terms of tone, the initial option paralysis is really the only negative I can point to, and that just seems to be a part of the ENGL Flagship experience. Well, that and no foot switch included for the price, that's a bit whack. But yeah, the amp itself is awesome. It sounds so good. You can use it right out of the box at stock settings or get as crazy as you want with all the options. Edmund ENGL and Horst Langer set out to create the definitive ENGL amp, and that is exactly what they've done. But yeah, I think that's where we'll end the video. Here's where I'll throw it to you. What do you think of the special edition, Founders Edition? What do you think of ENGL amps in general? Let me know what you're thinking down below. Huge shout out to ENGL for sending this over for us to check out together. Shout out to my amazing patrons. Their names are up on the screen right now. If you like what I do, consider joining them. You'll get access to bonus extras like tabs for all the demo tracks. You can also join as a YouTube channel member. That's a great way to leave a tip or bookmark my Tillman or Sweetwater affiliate links below. All that really supports the channel and helps me bring you better content, so I greatly appreciate that. Social media, merch, and Discord server links are in the description. As always, thank you so much for watching. You've been awesome, and I will see you for the next video.